Maybe I've been living under a rock, but this is the first time I've ever heard of the term a glitch in the matrix. But I'm so glad that I've learned this term because up until now I haven't known how to explain all of this. This is exactly what my friend and I experienced, and I'm happier to have just found this subreddit so that I can share this experience with all you guys. My friend Blair and I had just finished spending a week visiting our friend out in California, and now we were taking that long drive back to dusty Arizona. We had been driving for hours, then suddenly Blair turns to me and announces that she needs to find a place to pull off because she has to use the bathroom, or she swears she's gonna piss herself. I had just finished a huge soda and I felt I had to go out as well. At this point we were traveling on the barren highway well beyond the city limits, and no exit signs indicating that nothing so much as a gas station was ever anywhere to be found. A proper lady like Blair was determined to find some toilet somewhere because she didn't want to resort to pissing on the side of the road like some animal. Her words, not mine. Just as soon as she said that, she made a hairpin turn onto an exit with no exit sign. The road on this exit wasn't even paved, so I was pretty sure it was just some random trail leading out to the desert. But after a minute of driving down this dirt road, we pulled into some sort of town. I use that word town so loosely, and you'll see why in a minute. This town didn't have any paved roads. All of the roads were dirt, and it consisted of a few buildings and no houses. There was a building labeled post office, and there was a building that looked like a garage for fixing cars, and a large building labeled family cafe. The garage had an old rusty tow truck. It looked to be maybe from the 40s or the 50s. The diner had a few old 50s gas bombs in the front of it, and there were people inside, it seemed. In the center of these buildings was just an open, dusty area. Blair pulled her car in the front of the diner, parking in front of the gas pumps. Her brand new car was a stark contrast to the old gas pumps she had parked in front of. I thought they were really cool actually, so she snapped a picture of me next to them before we entered the diner. I'm currently working on trying to picture so I can upload it here. It was actually on MySpace, so I'm trying to figure out how the hell to log into that thing after such a long time. Yeah, it was a few years ago, you could say. Anyway, as soon as we stepped inside of the diner, I seriously felt like I was pulled into one of those creepy horror movies where it's a town full of people who lure in weary travelers so they can all conspire to murder them. I'm talking like Hills of Ice kind of stuff, you know. There were a few men sitting down on tables and eating, and there was a woman behind the counter wiping down the diner bar. All of them were dressed in out-of-date clothes. They were the style of clothes I've seen the people wearing in the pictures of the Dust Bowl, the ones you find in the history textbooks. As soon as Blair and I stepped into the diner, all the people, I mean all of them, looked up at us in unison. They didn't say a word, and every facial expression was emotionless. All I could manage to say was a reluctant, a bathroom? Then the woman behind the counter looked at us with her emotionless face, and for a few seconds longer, although it seemed like minutes, never taking her eyes off of us, without saying a word, she pointed to the left. Blair and I walked to the bathroom silently and uncomfortably. I should note that while in the diner I noticed there was a display of postcards for sale, and I didn't stop to look at them closely, but I got a glimpse of one of them as I was walking quickly to the bathroom, and I thought I saw a picture of a woman wearing a much older swimsuit style with one of those head coverings that women used to wear while swimming. I don't know if that's a very good explanation or if you even know what that means, but that's the best way I can explain it all, because I wasn't sticking around the place to browse the merchandise. Anyway, once Blair and I were out of the bathroom, we both confirmed to one another that this whole place was so surreal, uncomfortable, and we both wanted to get the hell out of there before we became the unfortunate victims in a slasher movie. Once we had finished our bathroom break, we left the diner as fast as possible. As we walked out, the woman behind the counter and the men eating at the tables continued to silently stare at us, their faces expressionless. As we got into the car and left, I could still feel their eyes staring at us. As we got into the car and left, I could still feel their eyes staring at us. Thinking of this, even today, makes my skin crawl. About a year later, my husband and I decided to take a weekend trip to Knott's Berry Farm. At this point, I had already told my husband about the creepy town Blair and I happened upon. In fact, I told him about it several times. It's just something that I couldn't easily forget. And to be honest, it was so surreal that if Blair was not with me that day, and if we hadn't continued to talk about this experience while we were driving back home that day, I really may have thought I dreamed it all. Anyway, my husband and I were on our way back from our weekend at Knott's Berry Farm in California, and I suddenly had the urge to go to the bathroom. As soon as I had suggested we find a place to go to the bathroom, I realized that we were on a barren highway again, much like the day I did with Blair, and I had got a huge sense of deja vu. I suddenly had the thought, wouldn't that be weird if we ended up in that same town again? No sooner I had thought that I realized my husband had made a hairpin turn onto an exit with a dirt road. I looked up to see us pulling up into the same town again. All I could do at this point forward, my was hung open. When my husband parked in front of the same old gas pumps, I was going to open my mouth to tell him that there was no way I was going back into that creepy diner, but before I could say anything, my husband turned to me and said, "Look, it's closed." But only the diner was closed. But the rest of the buildings in that town were closed too. I went up to see the diner and I peered through the windows, and there were what looked like ages of dust on the windows. Peering through the dust, all I could see on display was a few old postcards, and there was a thick, dusty set of cobwebs strewn along the cards and the display. This amount of dust and cobwebs were the result of decades of being untouched. There's no way that amount of dust and cobwebs on the display could have accumulated from the last time I went to the diner. Even previously there was no dust on display at all. Additionally, from what I could tell through the dusty window, the edges of the postcards were yellowed as they have been there for many decades. All of the people in that town were gone too. The town had been seemingly abandoned for decades by the looks of it all. Yet I had been there only a year or so ago. To this very day I still can't explain it. and I don't think I will ever be able to. I've run through so many scenarios in my mind. It's very plausible that the people up and just left the town, but how does decades of dust and aging paper just have been there in a little over a year? Why the weird, out-of-date clothes? Why the expressionless, wordless townspeople? Where were all the houses? Did me and my friend somehow glitch out and end up in another place in time, or some other time period, or some alternate reality? Any theories, you guys, would be good to hear, because honestly, I'm at a loss here.